Welcome everybody to this LIBER webinar. LIBER is the Association of European Research Libraries with about 420 members. The webinar today is co-organized by COAR, the Confederation of Open Access Repositories, OpenAIRE and SPARC Europe, and it's called Leading the Way: How Libraries Are Shaping the Future of Repository Services. My name is Olaf Siegert. I work at the ZBW, Leibniz Information Center for Economics in Hamburg, Germany. And I'm also the co-chair of the LIBER Open Access Working Group. And in this role, I am chairing today's webinar. Some organizational issues before we start. First of all, the webinar will be recorded and made available afterwards on the LIBER YouTube channel. We will also collect the presentations and we'll share them via Zenodo, and all of those who have registered today will get an email afterwards with the information on the links to either the YouTube video and the Zenodo presentations. Then, as I said already, please keep your microphones muted as we are quite a big crowd today. We have more than 300 registrants and we already approached 100 people here in the webinar. And if you have any questions, please add them in the chat. You can do this already during the presentations, but we will answer them collectively in the Q&A at the end of the session. And last but not least, please respect the LIBER Code of Conduct and ensure a safe and open atmosphere for everyone. Okay, after these housekeeping rules, now to the topic of today's webinar. A strong network of repositories is essential for safeguarding Europe's research output and driving scientific excellence across the continent. Most repositories are hosted and maintained by libraries. As open science continues to expand, managing repositories will become a greater priority for library services. Against this background, LIBER, OpenAIRE, SPARC Europe, and COAR launched IMPACT-REPO, a joint plan to promote the vital position of open access repositories in Europe's research. With this webinar, we want to give you an overview on IMPACT-REPO, plus some examples of best practices and innovations from repositories in Europe. The 60-minute webinar is organized as follows. First of all, we will have an overview on IMPACT-REPO by Kathleen Shearer, who is the Executive Director of COAR, followed by two examples of repositories. First of all, extending the repository metadata set with contract and payment details by Gernot Deinzer from the University of Regensburg in Germany, and then publish, review, curate, and the implementation of Notify in the repository of the University de Minho from Eloy Rodrigues. Then we have the questions and comments, and I will try a short wrap-up and an announcement at the end by Kathleen. Okay, and with this being said, I would like to hand over to our first speaker, Kathleen Shearer, but before, I will first stop my sharing. And then Kathleen, you can take over, please.
All right, can you see my slides and are they in full?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, great, yeah. Thank you so much, Olaf. There is a bit of noise in the background, so could we ask you please again to mute your microphones in case they aren't muted. It's a pleasure to be here. Just for those of you who don't know, as Olaf said, I'm the Executive Director of COAR, which stands for the Confederation of Open Access Repositories, and we're an international association. We have about 150 members from around the world, mainly libraries, but also research institutes, some government departments, and we also do a lot of work with not just individual repositories and institutions, but repository networks. And really our aim is to advance interoperability of the global repository network and strengthen and improve the value of repository services around the world. So I guess the broader context for this whole discussion today really is that if we want to achieve our vision for open science, we need a strong and well-functioning network of repositories that provide human and machine access to a range of research outputs in those repositories. So repositories are fundamental, really, infrastructure for achieving open science. And so the background for the IMPACT-REPO project is really some work that we've been doing over the last several years. In 2021, COAR launched a strategy to modernize the global repository network. What we were feeling was that the potential and the need for repositories was very, very strong, but repositories were struggling a little bit in terms of adopting new technologies and with obtaining the resources, shall we say, at their institution that they need to really run high-level services that would be required to support the vision of open science. So we decided to launch this strategy. A key aspect of the strategy was to work with regional and national associations to really advance it, because the conditions and the context on the ground is quite different in different countries. So we didn't want to do this just as a global initiative, but really as an initiative where we would work with local, national, and regional partners. And so in that respect, we joined forces with 3 other organizations in Europe, with LIBER, SPARC Europe, and OpenAIRE. And we decided to launch a strategy to strengthen European repositories together in 2022. And that led to a survey that we did in 2023 that looked at the current state and future direction for open repositories. So based on these survey results in 2023, we came up with 3 major action items to try to help strengthen repositories in Europe. One was to propagate best practices for repositories on the continent, to assist with the creation and coordination of national networks, because we know that the funding often for research comes at the national level in many cases, as well as the European level. So these national networks are very important, and we do know that many countries have their own national repository networks. So we wanted to move beyond the European level to also engage with national networks of repositories. And then the third point was really to highlight the value proposition for repositories and advocate for their critical role in Europe. And part of the reason we thought this was very important is because we think that our repositories are kind of under the radar a little bit. They're not as visible as they could be, yet they're so important for open science. So many of you have probably been involved in the Diamond Open Access discussions and heard a lot about Diamond Open Access. And we thought we need to raise the profile of repositories, as was done with Diamond OA, because they are equally potentially, if not more important in some ways, for open science. So that third point of really highlighting the value and the role of repositories is what we're going to present to you today. Based on that, we had an open consultation. So we had about 150 people, I think, provide input to our consultation about the value that repositories provided for them. And based on the input that we got, we created a number of profiles for repositories. And those profiles are contained in this document here, which is available on Zenodo, and there's a link to it at the end of my slides, so you can write down the DOI. Okay, so we basically profiled we pulled out 4 major roles for repositories that we think are absolutely critical to highlight for the community. And I'm going to take you quickly through them because I don't have a lot of time. And again, like, you're welcome to download it's a short document, very easy to read. And you're welcome to use it and repurpose it for if you can in your own local context. But one of the profiles really is that repositories enable greater impact for research and research outputs. So because they're open access, they're freely available, not just to the research community, but to the public. They can really extend the reach of content and resources that are deposited into repositories. And we heard this actually again and again from the survey, from the consultation, that repository managers really got a lot of feedback about how pleased their researchers were when they did deposit their content in repositories, because they could see that it being downloaded significantly more and being used in various different ways. And then the other role we think is very important to highlight is that repositories are really part of an inclusive infrastructure. So I guess, with all the discussion of article processing charges and the barriers that those cause for many to be able to participate in the system, repositories are essentially free to access by users, but also free to use by local researchers to share their content. So there's very few barriers to using repositories, and that means they're very inclusive in terms of allowing high levels of participation. Repositories are very important for trust, and I think this is something that perhaps we haven't highlighted also enough in our community, but they're essentially connected with long-lived institutions, universities, and their libraries who have a mission of curation and preservation of content. So we want to really emphasize that when you deposit something into a repository, it will be there, it will be taken care of over the long term. And this is a commitment that our institutions and our libraries make towards the content that they collect and curate. And then finally, the last profile is that repositories really also are very important for supporting innovation. And if we can ensure that our repositories are adopting the right practices, we can really build some amazing innovative services on top of their collective content. And so one of the things that we have been doing through COAR, and that Eloy will talk about in his presentation, is the publish, review, curate publishing model and the role of repositories in supporting a low-cost and innovative new model of publishing that would be considered a flavor, shall we say, of Diamond Open Access. But also we're having a lot of discussions now about the impact, what is the role of repositories in supporting artificial intelligence in reusing and creating value from the scholarly research outputs. So I'm going to just speak a little bit more about that in my next slide. But the document that we published related to this, as I said, is available in Zenodo. And at the end of the document, you can find a number of activities that we recommend repositories and other actors do to be able to really advance and strengthen repositories in Europe. So again, you're welcome to download and use that document if you can find it useful. So just in conclusion, repositories, I think, are really having a moment right now. We are seeing more and more, shall we say, repository-friendly open access and open science policies being adopted around the world. Japan has the recent example of adopting a green open access policy where all researchers are required to deposit into a repository in Japan, but Canada has a draft policy related to that. The NIH was supposed to implement a policy in 2026 and has actually accelerated the timeline for that, so that in mid-2025, all NIH publications must be deposited into PubMed Central. And then, of course, I don't need to speak about the European policies because you all probably know them better than I do. But Europe obviously has very repository-friendly and repository-reliant policies around open science. So, in conclusion, I'd really just like to say that these policies will really be pushing a lot of content into our repositories in the coming years. And that really is an exciting prospect, because imagine what we could do if a large portion of open access content and open science content is available in the global repository network. And we organized ourselves around our regional and national networks to provide seamless access to that content. It's very, very exciting if you think about it. So some of the ideas that we're pursuing at COAR is developing potentially a conceptual model for how to provide access in the language of any person's choice to large aggregations of multilingual content. So this is essentially using these incredible new translation tools to provide access to content in any language. And that content could be available in Japanese or Serbian or whatever. So we're in the process of discussing this internally at COAR, and we're going to see whether we can put together a really interesting proposal related to that. Then the other thing we've been discussing is the use of AI to provide plain language summaries of research outcomes based on the open access literature available. This is another quite exciting prospect. If you think about generative AI only being trained on the trusted peer-reviewed literature and leaving out all of the other stuff, there would be much greater accuracy in terms of the results that we could produce, I think, and scientific accuracy. And then the final point is the integration of data sets from different projects and different domains somehow integrated together to create new discoveries. And COAR is part of the EOSC Data Commons project that was started in April, and we're looking into the potential for that kind of opportunity in the context of EOSC, but potentially it could be something of interest for the broader global community as well. So I think I'll leave it there, and thank you very much for listening to me. I'm happy to take your questions, and now I'll turn it over to Gernot and Eloy.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Kathleen, for the good start. And yeah, Gernot, you are next, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
So, also sharing my presentation. I'm trying to share it. But I'm not able to share it anymore.
Oh. Try again.
Now you can see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks good. Thank you.
So first of all, I want to thank you to present our project. It's a project called Open Cost in this brighter audience. It's a small project from Germany with 3 project partners from Bielefeld, Hamburg, and Regensburg. And we are really talking about some special kind of using a repository. We want to extend the metadata scheme of a repository with cost data. So I have a short agenda, but first of all about the project. So the goals of our project is to create a technical infrastructure and technical infrastructure to share cost data, publication cost data, all costs related to a publication in a standardized way. So we are not aware of any standards for sharing cost data. The goal is really to make payments for open access as transparent as possible, to show really on an institutional, on a national, and even on an international level to how much we are paying for publishing in a broader landscape. So we have 3 points in our project. The first is to define a standard for sharing metadata related to costs. The second one is to making a harvesting about this cost and to gather all the cost data at one point, and then to reuse this data to make one special case for reusing data on costs. So the first of all we were thinking about is about metadata for publications. What are metadata for publications? You probably know all about metadata for publications. It's normal metadata of bibliographic data, like title, etc. We have technical data, like the format of files, the file size. We have legal data, like a license, like transferred rights. We have also metadata related to the full text, like metadata in chats or in PDFs. There are sometimes metadata. But what is missing in this is really the metadata for costs. So we suggest that we add a new kind of metadata related to costs, and we relate this to the other metadata of a publication. This can be done in 2 ways. Either you can really share this data in our own version. So we have really made a standalone version of cost data. You can use it by identifying via DOI and to connect them with the other metadata by the DOI. But you can also easily integrate it in other metadata schemes like the dataset and so on. There's a discussion in dataset, if you're going to the GitHub page of dataset, to include cost data also in the dataset metadata scheme. And obviously, this data have to be free to reuse, so you have to apply a CC0 license like for all the other metadata. So why to put cost data into repositories? So what does cost? We probably talking about publications at a publisher. Why should we do this into a repository? So first of all, we are paying for an open access publication. For a good open access publication, we are paying a lot of money, and so we should at least keep a copy in our repository. So the repository is one of our biggest things. We have the biggest possibilities to share data, because in a repository, we normally have excellent metadata. They are really curated by librarians, and they are really added by other sources like Crossref, DataSite, or OpenAIRE. So we have a lot of metadata there. And we have also some local metadata in repositories, like an institution, like a chair, like local identifiers for persons and so on. So we can combine all this metadata. On the other hand, we have also the information about funding for research. So normally we have some information about projects, about funders and so on. And there we have the first time really information about funding, about funding publications, funding the research. We don't have any numbers in there, but we have at least the information who pays for the research. So we have on the one hand the metadata in the repositories, which are really good. And on the other things we think about cost data, we normally would provide this data by the library management system. But if we are talking about library systems, they are not open normally. So they are not really open. They are difficult to expand. If we want to add metadata, it's not very easy. And even there are not all the publications. So there's normally, if you are talking, for example, about transformative agreements, there's just the contract in there, but not the publications related to the payments. And we don't want to put all the publications in a library system. We don't make another system with publications. So the advantage is to put cost data into repositories, at least in our point of view, is that we have an open system. We can exchange data relatively easily. We can combine all the metadata we have there. and we can really make an analysis, a statistical analysis of all this data we have in the repository. For us as a library, it's very easy to plan publication costs because we now have cost data from 2011 to up to now in our repository, and we know a lot about publication which we have funded. And we have also the standardized interfaces like the OAI PMH interface or LPs, where we can really exchange data very, very easily. And this is also proven to be very, very effectively. If we are talking about metadata of costs and from publications, so first of all, we would talk about paying for a single article. That means that we are talking about classical APCs, but also color charges, title charges, and so on. All costs with one are related to one article. We have developed in collaboration with experts. So we started with a workshop in Hamburg, and we made another workshop in Regensburg at the last year to discuss with other experts what should be in the metadata. We made online discussions and so on, and we finally arrived at a metadata set. It's, you can see it on the right side for a single article if the single article is paid. And we provide this information via the OAI PMH interface as an XML file. This was the first idea, but we also have made this XML without attributes, so it can be easily changed to JSON formats and so on, because nowadays JSON is getting more and more important. On the other hand, we have articles where we don't pay for the article, but we pay because they are part of a transformative agreement or a contract and so on. So we see that we are articles of a contract, but if you are looking at the articles, we see that we don't have this information in a machine-readable way. Sometimes it's mentioned as the copyright, like for scope 3. Sometimes it's just mentioned in the acknowledgement, like the deal contracts, and sometimes it's not mentioned at all. So our idea was to create a new entity called contract in our repository, and we can relate the publications, the articles, to this contract by its part of the contract. This contract becomes own metadata, like the name of the agreement, like an identifier, like invoices and so on. So we made new metadata scheme for this contract. And even this is not a new thing. If you are talking about, for example, projects, it's the same thing. We have an entity for project in our repository. And so we have metadata for this project. And now we have also a contract in our repository. For this contract, we have the metadata scheme, and the metadata scheme also represented in two ways. One is the XML way, the other one is the JSON way, and we can exchange them because now we have this in a machine-readable way, and also we provide this information via the OAI interface or with APIs where you can query. If we are talking about contract, nowadays we really regret that we have called it contract because it's much, much more which can be in this. We started with this transformative agreement because it's a very big thing in Germany, but we also seen very, very much at the beginning that we can also use committee models like scope 3 within this scheme, but we can also include diamond open access. So if we are paying for Open Library of Humanities, we can monitor this payments, or even for infrastructures. There's also a project in France about the transferring of infrastructures, and I think that's also a very, very important thing to know the payments we are doing there, even if we are talking about the shift from commercial open access to diamond open access. So it's not just payments for a contract, it's always payments for some agreement, and we are just putting the payment in. We are not making any evaluations in our scheme. Now I would just want to show some examples. The first example is paying for one article. So you see it's a repository in Hamburg on the left side, at Bielefeld on the right side, in the center of Regensburg, how we are displaying information about costs at our repository. So you see always one article, and you see always that there is a payment from one institution, even if you haven't paid and the other institution has paid for it. On the other hand, we are providing this in a machine-readable data. Here's the output of the OAI interface. So you can see really the XML schema and that we are providing this information. On the other hand, you see the example in our repository for agreements. On the right side, you see the agreement with Wiley, and on the left side, you see an article which is published within this agreement, and the linking from the article to the contract and from the contract to the article. So you really see a transparency about articles published in this agreement. And also for infrastructure like the Directory of Open Access Journals, we can do it. There are no publications related to this agreement. And on the last thing, I want to show the sharing of this data. So what we are doing now is really making a transparent view on the cost data. And this is really that we don't want to have a lot of work on the side of the library, but we want to be as transparent as possible. So there's a big initiative, OpenAPC, which really is very, very big because over 400 institutions from Europe and also from North America, some from Asia and Africa are participating at OpenAPC and delivering their numbers, their payments to OpenAPC, and it's really easy to reuse this number. So the first time we reused this number was at the Electronic Journal Library. This is a service run here in Regensburg for German libraries or international libraries which can take part. And we are displaying there the average APC worldwide and the average APC from our institutions. And sometimes we are wondering why we are paying more than the average in the world. And I think that's the first time that we are really evaluating this APC payments, and we really have a better insight into payments. So for the conclusions, it's really the first time that cost data are published in a freely manner, in a standardized manner. It's human readable and it's machine readable. And I think how we are publishing our cost data, it's really fulfilling the FAIR principles. And so to say, we are really what we are charging our scientists to do. We are at the library, see it our duty that we are doing the same, that we are publishing our data also in a fair way. I want to say thanks to the whole team of OpenCost. So I'm telling it here, but there are a lot of people working about it. Thanks to the whole team, thanks to the whole community who have contributed to the metadata scheme. It is really astounding to see how many people have taken part in this discussion, and really it was a very, very fruitful discussion. Thank you for your attention, and I have made all the links to our website, to the GitHub site and so on, and you can join the mailing list if you want, so it would be a pleasure, and I invite you all to get part of the OpenCost team and to join the discussion about metadata of costs. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Gernot. That was very interesting, especially now on the background of open access transformation in many countries, that we have, yeah, such a good innovation also regarding to repositories. Okay, then we will have the last presentation, but first, Gernot, can you, stop sharing?
Yes.
Okay,
so,
great. Okay, thanks. And then last but not least, Eloy, you're next with your presentation.
I think you are already seeing the slides, right?
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much, and it's really a pleasure to be here with you today, and to talk about one of the innovative aspects of that repositories can play. So I'll talk briefly about the model, the publish review model, that is probably certainly known by most of you, and then I'll to talk about what we are doing in Minho repository. As you certainly are all aware, on scholarly communication and on the journals have mainly four functions that are very important for the scholarly record and for the trust on the scholarly record. So the function of registration, the function of certification, the function of dissemination, and the function of archiving. On the printed world, these four functions need to be performed, or it makes completely sense, or it's really needed, that these 4 functions are performed by the same entity, and mainly, for instance, the journal, the academic journal, and the journal publisher. So this is one of the characteristics of the traditional scholarly communication system. Another current characteristic is that mainly it is also based on blind peer review and traditional peer review, where peer review occurs before publishing, and it is usually blind peer review. And that has also 2 main consequences that are long lag times between submission to publication, and sometimes usually several months, and sometimes even more than 1 year. And also one other aspect is there is a lot of energy that is wasted, especially on peer review, because as peer review is blind, and in many cases authors that submit to one journal that ended up not being published there, and submit to a second journal or to a third journal, and all this work that is performed on each of these steps is completely ignored by others, and the work is repeated. And in the world where we are publishing more and more, also because of the reward system, that is another discussion, this is really a problem, because we have each of us on the academic environment has less time and less availability to review the work of others if we are because of the pressure to publish. And so it's really a shame that all this energy and work is not taking it's wasted, let's say. But this traditional publishing system has been challenged and has been changed in the last decade or even before. And I think the COVID pandemic was really also a game changer. So there was really the emergence of several other more innovative ways of scholarly communication, especially the publishing preprints, and several other innovative models and services like overlay journals, pre-publication review services, etc., etc. And this some of them were pre-pandemic, but really during the pandemic this has grown. And it also around the time of the pandemic that this model was kind of coined, the publish review curate. And the model of this new model of publish review curate breaks the publishing process into different parts. In the published stage, so it is the first one, of course, a research artifact, and it's not only for articles, but other types of research contributions like data sets, study registration, etc. So a research artifact is made public by a researcher, and it's usually made public by a researcher in a repository. If we call it, I'm now referring to repository, to all types of repositories, from preprint servers to institutional repositories. And then in the review stage, there is the evaluation stage is done transparently and openly. So that research artifact that was initially made public is evaluated in a public way, and there is a feedback about the quality and the characteristics, etc., of that research artifact. And finally, and in some cases, let me tell you that in some cases, there are some services, or there are in some cases, some research artifacts just go through these 2 phases. So publishing and reviewing. There is no curation at the end. So it's you can have really different flavors. But on the complete model, then you have the last stage, that is the curation stage, where research artifacts are compiled into collections, and collections can be, for instance, a journal. Can be a traditional journal or an overlay or an overlay journal, and saying that this research artifact that was reviewed is part of this collection, and there might be some kind of summary of judgments or evaluation. So what this model does is what really can be done, and I think it's make a lot of sense to do in the digital world. We don't need to do in the digital world the same thing that we did on the printed world, is to separate the 4 functions between different players. And repositories can really have a very important role on the first and last function. So on the registration and on the archiving for long-term access and preservation. And the other 2 functions, the certification and the dissemination, can be performed by other services that can be also of different types, including journals and overlay journals and other types of services. So on this model, there is really a renewed and reinforced importance of repository. As Kathleen usually says and already said today, repositories are really having a moment. We have really an opportunity to play a very important role on the scholarly communication, and not only be the final destination of things that were born elsewhere. So a second, a parallel publication of articles that were published initially in a journal, but really being the birthplace of scholarly communication, being the place where all the process of scholarly communication and dissemination starts. And this vision has also been endorsed and promoted and supported by funders. For instance, the plan has the Towards Responsible Publishing proposal from Coalition is very aligned with this also with this vision, and on survey to researchers that were done that was done worldwide about more than a year ago, but the results were published a year ago. There is also a kind of growing support from researchers about the use of preprints and also other types of practices like open peer review and open licensing. And finally, here in Europe, for instance, Open Research Europe, that will have a new life by the end of 2026, and probably also, hopefully also using a more distributed approach, is also already using on the current stage the publish review curate model. And as you may know, several funders from different European countries are committed to supporting OpenAIRE, and so probably OpenAIRE will have a wider use starting at the end of 2026. So with all this in mind, here in Minho, we thought that it's also an opportunity to really reinforce the role and the visibility of our repository. And we thought that, of course, using Notify, and I'm with Kathleen, I'm also involved in the Notify project. Notify, in a nutshell, is developing a very lightweight, standardized and interoperable way to connect these different types of services. So instead of each repository having to negotiate or to establish the channel of communication between a repository and a review service or a overlay journal, or the other way around, instead of each overlay journal having to establish a communication channel to each preprint server or to each repository, what Notify is doing is really to establish a standardized way and a very kind of lightweight way to do that, to connect the different repositories and the different types of services. And so we thought that we have our repository is already an old repository, but we always try to make it new and to make it innovative. So our repository has already almost 22 years, and we collect close to now to 100,000 publications, and it's very visible. We have on the last year we have more than 2 million downloads per year, and as we have now the opportunity to upgrade our current instance of DSpace, we are using currently DSpace 6.3. And we are now upgrading to DSpace 8.1. We already started working on implementing Notify in our repository. So we have been already doing some testing since last year, and we are currently in the middle of the upgrade process. So we plan to go live with DSpace with the repository with DSpace 8.1 sometime in July this year. And we are focused initially on two main use cases, and this the first one will be really this one. It will be connecting repository with a peer community that is a recommendation service for preprints that has also some journals, friendly journals that are using the reviews made by PCI to publish articles. So with Notify, what we are doing is if an author, Minho author, submits a deposit, a preprint in our repository, he will be able to request an endorsement to peer community in just to fill a box on the deposit form of DSpace. And then peer community in will reply automatically, also using COAR Notify, if they will accept to review the preprint or not. And then if everything goes well, and of course there can be other interactions, then at the end there'll be an announcement of a review and an announcement of an endorsement. This paper is endorsed by peer community in, and those two announcements are automatically added to the metadata of the preprint in our repository. So there will be a link from the preprint version in our repository to the reviews and to the endorsement in PCI. And the other use case is connecting our two repositories, because apart from our publication repository in Minho, based on DSpace, we have also a data repository that is based on Dataverse. And here we want to also use COAR Notify to announce a relationship. So if there is a new paper that is deposited in our repository that has a link to a data set in the metadata, then the repository can announce automatically the relationship to our Dataverse repository, and then the link. And then on the data repository, a link to the data set is added to the metadata. And
Eloy, just a second.
Yes?
How many slides do you have? Because
One.
okay, then that's fine. Okay, thanks.
Okay. And I'm counting the time on 14 minutes 37. So I'm stopping. Okay. And then the other way around. So what we are doing now, as I said, we are upgrading our repository, and we plan to pilot this PCI integration in September, December, and then we also have already planned to connect to other to overlay journals on EpiScience, and also to connect our two repositories probably later this year or early in 2026. And with this, I'm finished. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Eloy. It's also interesting to see, how these new publication models are being made possible with repositories like overlay journals and stuff like that. Okay, so thanks everybody for the presentations, and now I'm looking to our participants. If you have any questions, then please put them in the chat. I just have a look. There's one side question by Caroline Sullivan. This might be somewhat granular, but what DC term are people using for announcing there's a data set that the paper is based on, DC relation references or DC relation has part? Can anybody of you help out here? I don't know, Gernot or Eloy?
I really don't know by heart, but I can check and I can reply. I can inform that.
Okay.
Normally for research data set, it's a reference which should be used.
Okay. Okay, yeah, thanks. Any more questions from the audience? Oh yeah, there's also the email address from Caroline. Thank you. Oh yeah, there's a question by Martin Wolf. There are examples of editorial boards of traditionally published journals resigning and setting up diamond journals. Are there examples like this with overlay journals? Eloy, can you answer that question?
I'm not sure if I completely understand the question, because overlay journals, at least as the ones that I know, they are all already diamond journals, so they are non-commercial journals. So I'm not aware of commercial overlay journals that might be. So if the question is if I know any overlay journal with editorial boards resigning, no. If I know that there were people that resign from traditional journals and create overlay journals that are diamond, in that case, yes, I know examples of that. And for instance, I'm immediately the journal that was that is directed by Timothy Howers. What is the name of it, Kathleen? Because I don't remember. It's one of those cases.
Combinatorics or something.
Combinatorics. Yes.
Discrete analysis. He has.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, thanks. And yeah, and Martin also wrote. I mean, those diamond journals are hosting the content themselves rather than linking to content elsewhere.
Yeah. Can I just add something to that?
Yeah, please.
I think one of the challenges or the gaps in the ecosystem for overlay journals is there's not easy to use overlay journal software. So one of the activities of the COAR Notify project is actually to develop an open source overlay journal software platform that could be easily used by, for example, editorial boards that were interested in moving from commercial to overlay journal. And one of the things that we've discovered with overlay journals is it's a lot less of a technical burden for editorial boards to manage those journals because a lot of the archiving and management work is really done by the repository. So that there's a lot of technical support at the repository, and that takes a burden away from editorial boards and smaller journals who want to launch their own thing and do it independently.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Any more questions from the audience? If not, I would have a question to all three of you, and this refers to AI tools and how they are interacting with repositories. I mean, just recently, COAR has published a report on aggressive AI bots harvesting our repositories. And so the question that comes to my mind is, in the end, are these AI tools rather good or bad for repositories? I mean, with traditional search engine, they are rather good for us because they really highlight our content. We get a lot of downloads from them, a lot of visibility. But with these new tools, I mean, they also have like not so good side for us. At least at the moment, it's very difficult for us to deal with these bots. On the other hand, they can also maybe enhance our visibility. I mean, how do you see this new phenomenon? Maybe Kathleen, if you want to start.
Yeah, I think there are positives and negatives to it, like everything else. So one thing that you didn't mention was that I know that there are repositories that are using AI in their repository to like automate metadata creation processes. So there's that aspect of the usefulness of AI in the individual repository. But when it comes to them repositories being part of the ecosystem that is, shall we say, scraped or crawled by AI bots, I think right now it is a challenge, as we found in the survey that we did, that repositories are really having negative impacts because they're so aggressive. But what I hope is, and we are going to be launching a task force related to this, is that we can come up with some solutions to help the repository community remain open, be available for the tools that we want, but are able to sort of filter out the bad actors in the ecosystem. And again, like I think I mentioned in my presentation, my real vision is that we contribute to developing certain AI tools on a subset of just scholarly literature or scholarly research outputs, because I think we could create some really interesting tools there. And but I think we're not quite at that level yet where we have the ecosystem is not quite ready yet to be able to organize around that kind of project.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Kathleen. There's also a question in the chat from Agustina Martinez Garcia to you, Kathleen. Do you know who will be participating in the AI task force yet?
We have, not yet. I mean, we have some people already set up. One is Herbert van de Sample, Peter Noth from UK COAR, the Apple COAR, Paul Walk, who's our technical consultant at COAR, and Martin Klein, who was based out of Los Alamos National Laboratories, and he's a kind of a technical expert as well. So what we're going to do is add to that group some technical people from the repository community that run repositories. So these are sort of technical experts, and then we want to have representatives from the repository community as well. So we will be putting out a call to COAR members soon for volunteers, but I suspect we may get more volunteers than we need. So I'll decide. Yeah. Thanks, Agustina.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Kathleen, for the additional information. Yeah. I mean, looking at the watch, it's already approaching 4 o'clock in Central Europe. So I want to come to the end of the webinar, but before I want to close it, I think, Kathleen, you want to make an announcement for future events.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, thank you, Olaf, and thank you, LIBER, for hosting this webinar. And I think what we'd like to do is make this one in a series of webinars where we illustrate and highlight the new roles of repositories now and in the future. And another thing that came out of the consultation that we did was that we'd like to also probably organize some national focus groups around repositories to help with the national discussions there. So stay tuned for that. That will probably have an announcement related to that in the fall.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Kathleen, and thanks also Gernot and Eloy for contributing to the webinar. As I said at the beginning, all those who have registered for the webinar will get an email with the link to the slides and also with the link to the recording, and it's also available on LIBER YouTube soon. And with this, I want to thank everybody again, and I want to end the webinar and see you soon. Goodbye.